Hello everybody, my name is James Richardson, welcome to Weston People, and today our guest is Raye Green.
Nice to see you, James.
Good to see you, Raye. Raye with an E.
Raye with an E, yes.
Absolutely, not to forget that one.
Well done.
Now, Raye is a retired teacher from Weston College, been in Weston quite some time now, since 1949.
49. Moved here on September the 1st.
Oh, wow, so you remember the exact date as well?
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yes.
But is also a very, very good local author of history as well.
That's very kind.
No, very much so. I've seen some of the books here, and to be fair, they are very interesting books. And these books are based around Worle, but also Weston-super-Mare as well is also...
You can't talk about Worle without touching on Weston.
Sure, it's a big part of Weston, isn't it?
Yes, big part.
Perfect. Now, first of all, Raye, tell me a little bit about your previous career as a teacher.
Okay. Well, when my children, I've got 3 sons, when my children got to an age where I could go back to work, I decided the best thing to do was probably teaching, because then I'd be at home on the holidays.
Absolutely.
You don't want 3 teenage boys on the rampage without anybody around. So yes, I retrained, and I went to Weston College, and I taught English there, and then later on archaeology, which was great fun.
Wonderful. Archaeology is a subject which is close to my heart as well.
Oh, is it? Oh,
it is.
Interesting.
It is indeed. I've been sort of, to be fair, a lot around the world. Also starred on Time Team once as well.
Ah!
Which was also good.
We won't go down that route.
No, absolutely not. It was good. It was that time when they were in Bleeding, when they found the Iron Man.
Absolutely, when they found the Iron Man.
That's right. Yeah, it's very good. I've been to Egypt, done some digs there as well, and Bethlehem, Jerusalem, and places like this in Israel.
I started off originally because I worked at Bristol University, my very first job when I left school.
Right, yeah.
And I was a PA to 4 mad professors in the classics department, one of whom was the professor of archaeology.
Right.
Who was Mr. Cook. Professor Cook, and he was doing Hadrian's Wall at the time.
Yes.
And so I used to go on trips up there with them, and I got completely hooked then.
Oh, it is. It's something then when you actually find something like an arrowhead or something in the sand, it's just...
you can't beat it.
That someone's dropped there. Even I had a metal detector given to me when I was a young child.
Yes.
You know, and you find like an old Byzantine coin or something.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing.
Yeah, brilliant.
It's a feeling that someone's actually walked across there hundreds of years previously and dropped something, and it's been found by yourself.
Yeah.
All that time later. Yeah. Well, okay, so you've been in Weston since 1949. Tell me a little bit about your family as well. So you've got 3 boys.
I've got 3 sons. They all live in Weston.
Yeah.
I don't believe in them going too far away. I did explain to them half a mile was enough, and that's worked out well.
Well done.
Yes,
yes, absolutely. So close enough you can keep an eye on them, but further enough don't create any waste. So that's wonderful. So your books, why Worle and Weston? Is it because you're from Weston?
Well, you see, what happened was that when I retired, I had too much time on my hands. It doesn't do.
Sure.
So with a couple of my very close friends, a girl that I've known since I was 3 and she was 4, and her husband, we started Worle History Society.
Right. Okay.
And that's what really... I mean, I had already started writing family history books for my own children and grandchildren, but I hadn't done anything else up until then. Children's stories for my grandchildren as well, that kind of thing.
Sure.
But when we started Worle History Society, one of the first things we thought we'd better do, it's hard to know where to start because there's all this stuff. And everybody starts right at the beginning. Well, in Worle's case, that would have meant the Doomsday Book.
Of course. Yeah.
And everybody's done that because it's the obvious starting point. So I said, we shouldn't do that. We don't want to go back over all that again.
Sure.
Best thing to do is to start with stuff that's just falling out of living memory
and touch on things which are of interest. Absolutely, because there are a lot of things in your books which even from Weston you hear wives' tales, you hear the next door neighbour or your grandparents tell you that Betty that used to live down the road got bombed and a window moved or what have you.
You've had Brian Austin on, haven't you?
We have.
He's a peach at that sort of stuff.
He really is. He's a lovely man to talk to as well.
I know him very
well.
Very
interesting.
Yeah.
But your books hit on facts and...
Yeah, I started with 1953, and that was our snapshot year.
Yes.
Decided, and I said, how about we try and find out everything that happened in the village in Worle in 1953.
Sure.
So everybody thought it was a brilliant idea, but nobody volunteered to do it. So idiot here said, all right, I'll do it, you know.
No, well done to you.
To be truthful,
Good.
I loved it because you see, it was coronation year. I was 7.
Sure.
So I was a flower girl on the Carnival Queen float that year for coronation year with the red, white, and blue ribbons in the hair. Oh. I remembered all that.
So even at that age,
so that
bit
was
of a looker.
That was fun.
Okay.
A bit more, I looked as miserable as sin on the photograph. I'd been up all night with excitement tummy ache, as my mother used to call it.
Yeah.
So I did Life in Worle. So the first thing I had to do was read all the Mercuries and Gazettes for 1953, find everything about Worle, go around the village begging people, thank you to Johnny Tucker, thank you to Eric Maggs, the cricket minutes and the football programmes and everything else.
It's amazing how much help you can get from friends and people.
They were marvellous. People were wonderful. And I finished Life in Worle in 2009, and that was the first one.
This one here?
Was fun. Yeah, and I've sold about 400 of those, I should think.
I've obviously read, I haven't read all of it, but I've read some of it, and it's very interesting. And some of the pictures which you have in here as well, you know, like obviously in the back here.
Yeah, that's my favourite one.
This one here.
Yeah.
You know, it's really,
it's lovely.
It's amazing.
It's
spring
terribly,
here, isn't it?
Yeah, it's terribly nostalgic.
Very.
And I think people enjoy that. And lots of names are mentioned in there, I'm afraid.
Yeah, but
only with their permission.
Absolutely.
But yes, it's been very successful and great fun. So
was that your first book?
The first one. Yeah,
okay.
That was the first one.
And for dates of the books, I think the earliest one is this one here, which is Worle at War.
Yeah, and that's my latest. That's my latest one, but historically it's the earliest.
Historically, it's the earliest one, at 1939 to 1941.
Yes, it's only 3 years. I was thinking when I started it was going to be the whole war, but it would be turning into a bit of a tome.
Well, to be fair, you know, those are the major years of the war.
Yes.
And any more than 3 years, that's an awful lot of paper to sift through. So well done to you for 3 years.
The next one is towards the peace, I think.
Right, that sounds good. And what sort of information does it have in Worle at War?
Well, it's been a fascinating thing. Mm-hmm. You know, it's an interesting thing. You live in a village all your life, and it doesn't occur to you when you're watching Dad's Army that you had a real Dad's Army in the village.
That was a Queen Mother's favourite, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we did have a real Dad's Army in the village. So one of the first things that happened was that I got distracted from the main book by somebody giving me a wonderful photograph of 58 of the men of Worle.
Right.
All in their Dad's Army in their Home Guard uniforms.
Yeah.
Taken at the Newtons, which is next door to where I live.
Yeah.
On the Queensway in Worle.
Yes.
And so I started off with that photograph, and it's on that book there, which is Worle's Home Guard. And I tracked down all 58 of them.
Yeah, you tracked down all of them?
Well, they weren't alive, most of them, you understand, but their families and friends, and I found out as much as I could about each of them. And I found that we still had 3 alive, and I met 2 of those. One of them lives on Guernsey.
Really?
Yeah, but the others are still in the village.
It's amazing.
And I must give them a mention. John Beecham, who's very poorly. I hope you're feeling better, John.
Yes.
And Sam Cox, who lives up on Wellebury. They're still
and they were part of a home guard.
And they were both on the photograph.
And they lived in Weston.
And they all lived in Worle.
In Worle.
Worle.
So the book itself, there's 2...
And that's got a page for each of the men.
That's amazing.
A page for each man.
That's fantastic. And what a wonderful thing to do as well, because, as an author, you want to publish a book which everybody can read.
Yeah.
But I also feel that a book like this is something that people can keep, but members of a family of those people that are shown, like a biography, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely great for them. Yeah, and I did enjoy doing it. I met loads of lovely people doing it. So that distracted me for a little while, but in and out of doing that, I was also reading all the Mercuries and all the Gazettes for those 3 years. That
interesting
meant
as well, I would imagine.
300 papers for each, 300 papers.
So we had a very own Captain Mannering in a way in Weston Superman.
We certainly did. We had some very interesting ones
some characters.
Some wonderful, wonderful remarks that come out, and you can see where the script for Dad's Army came from.
Sure.
Yeah, you really
can see where it's come from.
Yeah, some of them were completely mad.
Yeah.
They used to, of course, sleep on the old pier very often. They used to walk along from Worle through Hewstoke, along the toll road, along the top or along the top of the hill, and down to the old pier. That was their beat. Can you imagine? Well, they used to go there and back in the night, twice a night.
That's a long walk.
Yeah, and try and have a sleep on the pier.
And a cold walk, as well, and a cold sleep.
Yeah. So then I went to, I had all kinds of people give me all bits and pieces about the war.
Well, it's amazing. I mean, Weston played a huge part in the war, Weston Superman, and Worle, obviously. I always count Worle as Weston-super-Mare.
Yes, we don't count Worle as Weston-super-Mare because Weston-super-Mare arrived long after Worle.
Absolutely, Worle's been there a long time.
Yeah. You're not in the Doomsday Book in Weston, we are.
Oh right, Okay. Well, I didn't realise it was such a divide, but I guess Weston. I mean, I remember watching, as you and I are both into our history, that Weston-super-Mare and Worle played a huge part in the war because they found only recently some maps which indicated that one of the major landing areas for a German invasion was Weston Beach, and these are maps which have got written on paratroopers, where the Germans were going to parachute in.
It's ideal, isn't it?
It's ideal.
It would have been, without the barbed wire, an ideal beach.
Well, the Germans actually indicated on the map the barbed wire, where they were going to block the roads, where they were going to land. A lot of it has got to do with the fact that you can't really miss it. And it's straight down the Bristol Channel.
Yeah, turn right at Steepham.
That's it, and one of the fastest currents in the world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, that's why we didn't realise that. But you've also got an interesting fact as well, that Worle High Street has been there a very long time.
Yeah.
And
actually, that wasn't the main road. The top road was the main road.
The top road there.
Yeah. Worle High Street's fairly sort of 19th century.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what are the sort of one of the most long-standing shops or places in Worle?
Well, we've got, of course, quite a few shops that have stood the test of time. On the day that we moved to Worle in 1949, my father and my uncle went along the road from where I lived, about 5 doors down, to a little place called Skidmore's.
Ah, right,
and they went into the cafe at the back where old Mrs. Skidmore,
right,
mother of the twins, mother of Bert and Bill, and, and grandmother of the Skidmores who are running it now, ran a little cafe. And they went in there and bought themselves some breakfast.
Wonderful.
And Mrs. Skidmore said, "Where are you living then?" And they said they bought the house along the road. And she obviously noticed their rather broad Welsh accents.
Yes.
And she said, I asked how much they paid for it, and they told her, and she said, oh dear, she said, you've been done. It's only worth half that.
Really?
That was a good start. Yeah, Mrs. Skidmore, bless her.
Yeah.
And of course, Skids is still there. They opened in 1919.
They're still there. And still doing very well.
Yeah, absolutely. Completely changed what they
Skidmore,
do.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And Brian.
And Brian and Mike.
Brian lives around the corner from me.
Yeah.
So they're all still there.
And the Golden Lion?
And of course, that's one of the newest pubs in the village, actually. Because the old King's Head, I suppose, and the Lamb and the New Inn.
Yes.
Were all there before the.
So they've been there long-standing as well.
The Golden Lion had a terrible time in the Second War, in a sense. First thing is that the people who ran the pub at that time, Mr. and Mrs. Licks, had been there for about 35 years then. Right.
Brought
their family up there.
Yeah.
He was a pigeon fancier.
Okay.
And kept pigeons.
You may have to tell people what that means, because people could mean
it
perhaps.
Sound awful, doesn't it? Yes. He kept homing pigeons in a pigeon loft out the back.
Thank you.
That's quite all right. And they are called pigeon fanciers. Truly, they are, James.
Yes, absolutely. I believe.
And there were a lot of them in the village, and they had a club which was called the Flying Club, which sounded a bit more pretentious. Didn't it?
Absolutely.
Like that.
It sounds a little bit more civilised.
Yeah. And they actually used to supply pigeons to the armed forces, and it's rumoured that a couple of Worle pigeons went ashore with the D-Day landings underneath the coats of the soldiers, so that they could let them out and fly home with information.
That's interesting.
It is. But we suffered quite a bit with the bombing.
Yeah, we did.
In Worle, and particularly in the area around the Golden Lion. Okay. The first bomb that landed up as a fatality was right opposite the Golden Lion. It was a cottage called Westonia Cottage, where a family called the Joneses lived.
Right.
My maiden name was Jones, but they weren't any relation.
Right.
And the husband and wife and a 3-year-old little girl called Valerie all died in there.
Oh dear.
But their son Melville and the family dog were blasted straight out of the front and landed on a mattress in front of the Golden Lion.
Wow.
And we found Melvin.
Did you?
He's still alive and kicking in Birmingham, so that's good news.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And all around that pub, first of all that cottage opposite, then a cottage in Greenwood Road, a pair of semi-detached cottages in Greenwood Road were bombed. Then two what were then brand new council houses right next door to the church hall were bombed.
Right.
And they rose 2 inches off their foundations and then settled again. The family who were living in there, Peter Snook, is one of our members. He was about 8. And he remembers that when the bomb hit, it was right by their front gate.
Yes.
And the fire in the grate, which they had lit at the time, went straight up the chimney with the blast.
Wow.
It disappeared up the chimney.
Wow, wow.
And a big vase on the end of their mantelpiece fell off on his sister's head.
Oh.
He says she's never been the same. But she seems all right.
What about the vase? Was that all right?
The vase, I don't know actually. Do you know, I've not asked. I'll ask him.
I hope so.
I'll phone him
Maybe
when I get home.
Cliff or something like this.
What happened to you? What happened to the vase? Yeah.
It wasn't a Wedgwood or something.
I shouldn't have thought so. So, all around the Golden Lion.
Yeah.
And the Golden Lion stood there completely unscathed in the middle, a bit like Worle St Paul.
So everything around it was being bombed, but the Golden Lion survived?
Yes, absolutely, and it's still there.
You would have thought the Germans had something better to do than bomb Worle that day.
You would, yes. I find it quite amazing. Yeah.
Well, it's been a fascinating interview.
It's been lovely to talk to you.
And you.
And
you.
I hope lots of people will have a go at doing their memoirs and dealing with local history. And
I hope so, because the history is something we need to hang on to.
Yeah.
And
we've got 60 members at Worle History Society now. We have a lovely time at all our meetings. So anyone who's interested, give me a ring and come along.
Sounds good. And what we'll do is at the end of the show, we'll make sure that we can put up for you a link where you can get hold of the...
Yeah, we've got a terrific website.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So
you can find everything on there you need to know.
The whole lot. So if you're interested, is there an interest that people at home should have if they want to join? Is it mainly sort of reading, writing?
We do all kinds of things.
Right, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, we go out, we do walks during the summer.
Okay.
We do summer walks around the village, and those are really very popular, usually on a Sunday afternoon, but we do one evening walk on a Thursday evening. Fantastic. And that landed up at the Golden Lion with the Morris men. And
was it on purpose by chance?
Yeah, we booked it. We booked it.
So all the places you could have ended up, you ended up in the right place.
Yeah, we have a quiz night once a year. We have all sorts of people coming in to giving us talks about local history.
Fantastic.
And our members all contribute vastly.
Perfect. Well, that sounds wonderful. So if you're interested, watch the link. It's brilliant.
Yeah, please come along and join us.
There you go.
Yeah, bring all your photographs, all your old documents, everything.
And if you get stuck when you get there and you can't find anybody you know, ask for Raye with an E.
Yeah, and it's always held in the community centre in Lawrence Road in Worle, which used to be the Methodist Chapel.
There you go. Perfect. And just before we go, if anybody wants to get hold of your books, where can they be found?
They can be found in Waterstones, they can be found in the museum shop, and they can phone me on 516-773, and I've got them all at home.
There you go.
Call round and have a cup of tea and take a book away with you, which would be great.
Make sure you get a biscuit as well.
Oh, I'm not very good at biscuits. Oh. I'll try.
Great. Thank you very much indeed. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
And you too, and thank you at home for watching.